Nick Pitts.
And welcome to Point of View on this August 20th, 2019 day. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. So grateful that you have decided to join us today. And I'm glad that I've got my sparring partner back in studio, Chelsey, Youman.
I would say better than ever, but I'm actually a little under the weather.
Yeah,
so
better than ever.
I got my Phoebe voice on today.
Phoebe voice. What is the pretty cat? What's the...
Smelly cat.
Smelly cat. Oh, I feel so bad. You know, there's like an ongoing feud right now on Twitter between what's the better show, Seinfeld or Friends.
Oh, can we? This is like a lifelong battle. I
feel like it's not even a competition right now. I don't know why.
Friends, right?
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me?
This is ridiculous.
Listen for the next segment. Let's get going.
We might have to go back and forth on this, but we're again. We've got a great show for you today. Besides the fact that I'm going to be arguing with Chelsey, or maybe evangelizing Chelsey on the goodness that is Seinfeld over Friends. But beside the point, we know that Chelsey doesn't necessarily have the greatest affinity for facts, like Seinfeld being better than Friends.
I'll let it slide. I'll show up. Don't worry.
But we do have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking a little bit about Planned Parenthood. News came out yesterday that they have decided to not accept Title X funding, and in turn, it's about close to $300 million that they're.
Can I get an amen?
Refusing from the federal government because of the strings that are attached to it, namely that funds cannot be used relative to the advising of abortion services. And so, talk about some of the implications from that, as well as just some of the interesting numbers. I highlighted their annual report from last year in the daily briefing this morning, and I think you're going to want to stick around to better understand. Planned Parenthood over the past 6 months has continued to reveal more and more about what their core competency is, as well as their core business model. And it is not aligned with the majority of Americans, and it's become very illuminating. So you'll want to stick around for that. We'll talk a little bit about this idea of Andrew Jackson being stripped from all things government right now. Marianne Williamson, who's the Democratic candidate for the presidency of the United States, the self-help guru, has decided that she has come out with a position to try to eradicate all vestiges of Andrew Jackson, or so she says. And so we'll talk a little bit about this idea of trying to cleanse and erase parts of our history and the benefits of it and the detriments to it as well. Probably one of the more interesting stories that we're going to get to is this angry woman has posted this rant on YouTube that has now gone viral over her frustration in California over the fecal matter and the homelessness that's right outside of her business. And her rant has now gone national and viral, and is causing individuals to be able to raise their heads as to what in the world is going on in California, which is something that I think we all have been saying for a little bit. And then obviously we have to talk about this interesting saga that continues to embroil or center on what's affectionately known as the Squad in their travel or lack thereof to Israel. And so we'll be talking about that. And then finally, I can't wait to have you later on in the show. There was a staggering statistic that says upwards of 40+% of individuals within the Republicans are distrustful of college campuses. And so we'll have on Dr. Jack Goodyear of Dallas Baptist University. He is the dean of the Gary Cook School of Leadership there as well. He did some of his research work within evangelicals and Christian circles relative to kind of creation care. Some of his research centers on, and really excited to be able to hear his perspective as an individual that is among kind of the evangelicals, but also finds himself on a Christian campus, college campus as well. So we'll be talking about that and more. And then obviously we'll continue to go back to this saga that is Chelsey's lack of understanding about the goodness that is Seinfeld. But we'll probably just go back and forth on this.
I've tried.
I just don't like what I don't even know where to start with that.
I think it's a little bit before my time. Like, I was too young to watch it at the time, and I probably was a little young for Friends, but caught up, midstream to Friends. Yeah. But I have never been able to get into Seinfeld. I've tried and tried. And my husband, like, he loves Seinfeld, was raised on Seinfeld. Apparently I make references constantly to actual scenarios from Seinfeld, but don't know it. And so, like, every time I say something, he'll be like, there's an episode in Seinfeld about this.
That's exactly why it's so good.
Great, but I don't want to watch something and not laugh. So I just could go back to the Friends and The Office.
Okay. Well, our listeners will continue to convince you, and so we'll be opening up some of the phone lines as well as Facebook page will be on, so you can share a little bit with Chelsey about your favorite episodes from Seinfeld. I mean, who can't laugh when they think about the soup Nazi? Who can't laugh when they think about the Frogger episode relative to the Curio? Like, there's just so many good moments that we will be talking about. But let's jump on into it, Chelsey. So as we know, Chelsey has transitioned. She is no longer with the First Liberty. First Liberty Institute has transitioned over to Human Coalition Action, affectionately known as HUCO Action. Mm-hmm. And so really is in the public policy space, advocating for, fighting for this idea, fighting for public policies that help eliminate abortion. And so the news that Planned Parenthood is leaving the federal Title X family planning program rather than comply with new Trump administration rules regarding abortion counseling is probably welcome news for you.
Oh, yeah? Yes. This is a good day all the way around. It means that upwards of $300 million of taxpayer dollars out of Title X will not be going towards abortion and Planned Parenthood. So I think it's a huge victory. I was very curious to see how they would respond, because we know that the administration released regulations a while back, and I was curious to see what Planned Parenthood would do about that, because after all, this is a government benefits program. If you're a grant recipient, it is a gift from the government, which means there are going to be strings attached and parameters around that. And the administration's goal is to be pro-life, protect preborn children, and rightfully so. So one of the regulations they put in place was you can't refer for abortions or conduct abortions if you're going to receive the funds. And obviously Planned Parenthood is the abortion business of America. So they had to bow out. And I think it's a really, really good day because what that does enable is groups that are actually helping stabilize women's conditions and help women along the way, meet them where they're at, and empower women. They're going to be able to have more access to more funds because of this. So I'm really grateful for the news.
That's phenomenal. So we have got to take a break right now, but when we come back from the break, we're going to break it down a little bit more. I've got some numbers behind the number of women that are going to be did receive care through Planned Parenthood outside of their abortion services, but also Winston Churchill said, the further we look back into the past, the more clearly we can see into the future. And if the past is any indication, there was a future with Planned Parenthood that really wasn't going to be an entity that provided non-abortion services. They were really doubling down on their abortion services. And so what does that mean for us? But specifically, what does that also mean for these women that once received some of those services from Planned Parenthood that were non-abortion? We'll be talking a little bit more about that, share some numbers behind that to help you better understand that. And then from a Christian perspective, what we need to think about and do relative to this new news. That's welcome news for those of us on the pro-choice side. But we've got to take a break. But when we come back from the break, pro-life side. When we come back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Last month was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth, or was it? A number of news stories proclaimed that the month of July 2019 was even hotter than July 2016. That made it the hottest month on record. Climatologist Dr. Roy Spencer argues that July 2019 was not the warmest on record. He acknowledged that it was the hottest based upon global average surface air temperatures, but he rightly explains that those temperature measurements have three major problems. Let me focus on just two of them. The urban heat island effect has caused a gradual warming of land thermometer sites because of such factors as buildings, parking lots, air-conditioned units, and vehicles of various types. The impact of this may be localized, but still affects the overall temperature measurements. Another measurement comes from ocean temperatures, but these apparently are uncertain due to changing measurement technologies as well as influence from ship engine intakes and buoys. We now have satellite measurements, but only since 1983. He therefore recommends meteorologists use the reanalyst data that is available from NOAA's climate forecast system. We can put a map on the Point of View website. If you look at it, you will notice it matches your own weather experience last month. For example, much of the Midwest all the way to parts of Texas actually had cooler than normal temperatures in July. So why don't scientists track global temperatures using these reanalyst data sets? Well, they only go back a few decades and don't provide a longer look. The longest record of temperature data comes from surface thermometers. Dr. Spencer believes that July 2019 was probably the fourth hottest month in the last 4 decades. Unfortunately, all the headlines said that it was the hottest ever. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Affirm Films and the Kendrick Brothers, Overcomer, starring Alex Kendrick and Priscilla Shire, rated PG, in theaters this Friday. Overcomermovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. On this August 20th day, we have been talking about the news relative to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood said Monday it will withdraw from the federal family planning program that provides birth control and other health services to poor women rather than comply with the new Trump administration rules that forbids referring women to doctors who can perform abortions. And so Planned Parenthood receives, I misspoke earlier, they receive about $60 million of the $286 million given annually through the federal program known as Title X. Funds that have enabled the group to provide more than 1.5 million low-income women each year with services like a birth control and pregnancy tests, as well as screenings for STDs and breast and cervical cancer. But our choices don't make us, but they do reveal us. And so I want us to look at some of the numbers specifically relative to Planned Parenthood that's going to help us better understand what it is this entity has been doing in the present, as well as how it's departed significantly from their past. And so Planned Parenthood refusal reveals their priorities. Their 2017-2018 annual report indicated they performed 332,757 abortions during the reported year, the most since 2011 and 2012. We've seen an uptick in their abortion services vertical that they produce. So while abortion services has increased, non-abortion services has decreased. So, for example, let's look at one stat in particular. They performed around 570,000 breast exams and Pap tests during the reported year of 2017-2018. This was down from 617,000 in 2016. So it's a drop of a significant drop of almost 50,000 exams. Concerning their financial situation, though, I think it's really important for us to understand just how large of entity Planned Parenthood is. And so, like I said earlier, they're withdrawing about 60 million. They're refusing about $60 million worth of funds from the government. But in 2017, 2018, they had approximately $1.9 billion in net assets. This is a significant increase from their $1.6 billion they had in 2017. So with this choice, they are taking a financial hit. But with this choice, we're also seeing their priorities as to where they're giving more of an emphasis to into the future.
Right. So we've heard this, what I will call a bold-faced lie repeated by Planned Parenthood for years and years, that they are in the women's health services. To put all of these numbers into perspective for you, I'm going to just break it down to percentages. Planned Parenthood provides 35% of our country's abortions. 35% of the abortions. Yeah. We lose 1 million babies a year. They are responsible for over 300,000 children's deaths every year. They provide only 2% of other women's health reproductive services across the country. So it's a staggering statistic to me. Yeah. And it really goes to show, first, the statistics speak for themselves. They are the abortion industry in our country. 1 in 3 women who've received an abortion has received one at Planned Parenthood. The other thing I think is worth really noting is they recently lost their president. And I know we spoke about that recently. Yeah. And she was a doctor with a heightened focus. She said when she went in, I wanted to know if we were healthcare first and advocacy second, or the other way around. And they fired her within the year for trying to expand cancer screenings, STD testings, the actual reproductive health medical services portion. She tried to expand, and they eliminated her and hired a former lobbyist, government advocate, into the role. And so they're really I think their true colors are showing. Yeah. They are about abortion. They're about expanding abortions. I found their plan for, if Roe versus Wade was to be overturned, I think the biggest misunderstanding in America about that is that something would change the next day. And the truth is that states still would have to make abortions illegal and go through that process. But they have an expansion plan for that. Planned Parenthood wants to expand into states that will keep abortion legal. And they're going to grow clinics there. And so I think it's really important that our federal government make the statement it's making now, which is under the Trump administration, we're not going to fund abortions. They're a $1 billion industry. They can get their money elsewhere. And that's great. It's a government gift. And we as faith-based organizations for years have had to sit out on government funding because of the strings attached. And I think this makes it more of an even playing field, that there are strings attached maybe the other way too. So.
Yeah, what was fascinating, I think that's really illuminating the statistics you brought out, because it really does compare and contrast where their emphasis is upon. So just let's look at history for a second. Just 2 months, maybe a month, 2 months ago, is when Planned Parenthood let go of their CEO, Dr. Nguyen. She was she was brilliant, and she was one of the leading experts in the country on public health services. She came from Baltimore. She revolutionized some of the processes there to really help serve the greater public. And then there just became a loggerhead, as we remember, where the board decided that they wanted to double down on their abortion services. They continued to want to place an emphasis on those, and also recognize the need to be able to raise funds for that, because as they saw the tea leaves, the Trump administration and conservatives were starting to take it more seriously, that they were refusing to allow government dollars, the public dollars, to be able to go into abortion services. Because as Chelsey, as you know, the public is on the pro-life side, contrary to what you might hear. Like, the public very much is on the pro-life side, and it's unfair for the pro-lifers, individuals that believe it to be true, that you're murdering a child for their dollars to go towards this epidemic. But the statistic that I found so alarming, that what you pointed to, is reality. They're performing about 1/3 of the nation's abortions, and so when you're taking away that, yes, there's inside of us, there should be that compassionate heart within inside of us that should say, well, yeah, but they're also performing other services. But it's a very minuscule part of their thing, which I think is very helpful.
And those services are provided in a lot of avenues. We're speaking in the state of Texas right now, and an article came out, I believe it was Texas Tribune, about a month ago, that basically it was talking about, we have all of these clinics in healthy Texas women, and no women are actually going to the clinics. Like, here are all the clinics we have, and they're essentially empty and not seeing enough women. And, they were making the point that they thought that there was a reproductive rights shortage, or reproductive health services shortage in our state. And I look at that as a supply demand issue. That means, we have more supply, luckily, than demand. And they've increased funding in the state of Texas. One of the great things done last session that does deserve applauding. I don't think that we're getting enough applause out of what we did on the pro-life side last session. And that is, they increased, almost tripled funding to Alternatives to Abortion, which are clinics who are providing actual reproductive health services to pregnant women, but also more than that, social services help. I know that at Human Coalition, there are social workers on staff. There are counselors on staff, and the goal at Human Coalition is to stabilize women's circumstances and think broader than quote unquote the quick fix that an abortion supposedly would be, and really get to the root and the heart of the issues, whether it's domestic violence, joblessness, job counseling, whatever the woman really needs, meeting her where she's at and meeting those needs. That is the pro-life message. It's pro-woman, and you can't bifurcate the two. And so there's a lot of good work being done for funds that are going to the right entities that are there to really help women and their children.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that we need to be cognizant of is this money isn't going away. Like, this is still government funds that will be dispersed to other entities. And so what we know to be true is that there's around $60 million now that Planned Parenthood has decided that they are not going to take because of the strings that are attached to it. And I can think of a couple of entities that might be able to utilize $60 million to be able to further their services without directing women towards abortion providers. Because at the end of the day, like we said, our choices don't make us, but they do reveal who we are. And so Planned Parenthood, with this choice and their refusal, has revealed who they are. What we knew from 2 or 3 months ago with the stepping down of their CEO, Dr. Nguyen, to this decision just yesterday that they announced. This is just revealing that they're doubling down on their abortion services. But the choice is also, there's a choice that's for us as well. I'm reminded in 1 Kings 3 that Solomon had to make a decision as well. 2 women came to him at the beginning of the morning. It says that one woman had a dead child that had been, and then she took a living child from another woman. And the other woman and that woman now went before King Solomon, asking his wisdom as to whose child this was. King Solomon decided to split the child in half, and the true mother made the choice of, I'd rather give up my child than watch my child die. As those of us who believe it to be true that there is a child, a living being, a person God died for in the womb, we have a choice to make. What are the sacrifices that we're willing to make in order to help decrease that number of abortions until it gets to that glorious divine number of 0? That just as Planned Parenthood made a choice, we have a choice to make as well. But we've got to take a break, and we'll be back with more Point of View right after this.
We live in a digital generation. Point of View is reaching this often overly plugged-in generation with truth. You can keep up with us 24 hours a day using your phone, your tablet, your laptop, or your desktop. Search for the Point of View Radio Talk Show on Facebook, where you can keep up with today's issues, learn about current and upcoming guests by liking us on Facebook. Also, follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @PointOfViewRTS. That stands for Point of View Radio Talk Show. Learn, interact, make a difference with Point of View using new media. And here's one way you can make a big difference. Help us increase our reach by spreading the word among your friends. Share a Facebook post. Tag us in a tweet. With enough joining us to plant seeds, we'll see a tremendous harvest. Come on, it only takes a minute. Search for Point of View Radio Talk Show on Facebook, @PointOfViewRTS on Twitter, and subscribe to the Point of View Radio Talk Show channel on YouTube. Learn, interact, share. The Point of View Radio Talk Show. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Nick Pitts.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. I'm joined by Chelsey Youman of the HUCO Action. It's not the, is it? One of these days, it's just
HUCO Action. Human Coalition Action.
Okay, I kind of got it there, almost, until I put the article on the front of it. And so, what are you going to do?
You did pretty well the first round.
Yeah.
You
first
really
round.
were able to say it.
You know, I'm a creature of habit. Okay, I've got an interesting statistic that I want to throw out there. That 47% of Americans eat the same breakfast every day. Does this apply to you?
100%.
Really?
If I eat breakfast,
Okay.
I've got little ones, so really I don't know what I eat every day.
Okay,
Just whatever I find.
If you don't mind me asking, what is your go-to breakfast that you always eat?
Probably like a bar.
A bar?
Like anything on the go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a proclivity towards
Maybe
one bar?
Maybe a
over
protein shake, but that's kind of embarrassing.
Okay. No. I do protein shakes, but then I realize I don't shake it enough, and so it's just a protein chunk, and so it's not necessarily the most. But I always eat the same. Like I have a coffee, and then I have a protein bar. As you can tell if you're watching on Facebook right now, that protein bar is really working out for
Sorry, I
me.
laughed.
No, I'm laughing with it because I thought it was so funny. I don't know what's more embarrassing, the fact that Chelsey laughed or the fact that I laughed at my own self-deprecating.
We are creatures of habit. I can totally see that statistic being true.
So, but nevertheless, we're going to jump over, shall we? So I forgot to plug at the very beginning. If you want to find out more information about the articles that we're covering, you can head on over to the Point of View website at www.pointofview.net. And when you go there, you can click on today's show and you can find out more information about some of the articles that we'll be talking about, as well as find out more information on Chelsey and her new endeavor at HUCO Action, as well as some of the work that I'm doing with the Daily Briefing and the Institute for Global Engagement. And so but also over on Facebook, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. You can find out more information on today's show. You can watch it live. You can comment in. You can endure looking at my picture and all my muscles that I've got going on right now. But nevertheless, okay, let's jump into it, shall we? So Senator Elizabeth Warren, senator out of Massachusetts, running for president of the United States, polling in second, third, kind of right now. Senator or Vice President Biden, former Vice President Biden, I should say, continues to lead atop the pack. But Senator Warren found herself in a little bit of hot water yesterday relative to some of the comments that she's been making over the years, specifically advocating and really kind of identifying as an individual with Native American ancestry. So to kind of give you context, one of the interesting things that Axios, which is a news service out of D.C., is really identified at the beginning of this week is that Democrats are going to be focusing in on the Native American vote. They've identified this as a constituency they'd like to run up the totals on in the upcoming 2020 election. And so because of that, they're giving more attention and more time to Native Americans and Native American issues. And so yesterday, Senator Warren found herself at a Native American conference in Iowa, and she opened her remarks at the forum on Native American issues with a brief public apology related to her past ancestry claims. She said, quote, "Like anyone who's being honest with themselves, I know that I have made mistakes. I'm sorry for the harm I've caused. I have listened. I have learned a lot, and I'm grateful for the many conversations we have had together." Context purposes, end quote. Context purposes, in October, Senator Warren released the results of a DNA test intended to quiet the criticism from President Trump and others who argue that Senator Warren's inaccurately has claimed Native American ancestry. She took an ancestry test, and it came back that she had Native American, I think, one over 1,054. So very, very minuscule. And know that according to certain reports that she has been claiming a Native American ancestry dating back to college, and then when she went into her professorship at Harvard,
What do you
And
mean
so-
claiming it? Like on applications?
Applications, and so
She's not registered.
not registered. And this ancestry test revealed that there wasn't a lot. And so some of the counteracting narrative has been, you've been claiming this thing, have been rising on this thing, but in reality, you aren't this thing known as a Native American. And so she issued an apology. And so, Chelsey, thoughts on this?
Well, I think I read some things that really helped put everything into perspective for me, besides the obvious, which is you can't claim a heritage just to sound interesting and like take advantage of it that you have no actual tie to. And so one of the statements I read from, I believe, was it Cherokee that she...
I think I'm not quite sure.
The tribe she was associating with, I believe it was Cherokee, but don't call me about it. Said she's not registered. She's never voted. We're still voting as a tribe on in our communities, and she's not actively a part of our community. She's not connected to our community, and she's basically using us to get a leg up. And I think that that's a correct sentiment to express frustration about. So the right thing for her to do is to apologize, and is to stop taking advantage of a people group that she's not really associated with. And I think that's really the sentiment that I came to understand was why they're so frustrated is they have a heritage and a history and a culture that is very rich, that they are connected to and care deeply about, and communities that they were raised in, with traditions that they honor and esteem. And for her to kind of ride those piggyback off of that, it's not right.
Yeah. So Cherokee Cherokee Nation leaders said that after the test released, that Ms. Warren seemed to subscribe to the idea that tribal citizenship is determined by blood, which some leaders reject, kind of what you were moving toward, reject in favor of a view of citizenship that's rooted in centuries of culture and laws, according to the spokeswoman for Cherokee Nation at the time. They go on to say she's not a person of color or a citizen of the tribe. She's apologized for further confusion around tribal sovereignty, tribal citizenship, and the harm that has resulted from the identification and her release of the 2018 DNA test. This indicates that it goes back. You would have to go back. It says more than likely had Native American ancestors 6 to 10 generations back, and it kind of does reveal this concept that is becoming increasingly prevalent within politics that's known as identity politics, that you can only speak on particular issues that you have a great affinity for or a characteristic or possession of. It somehow elevates your perspective. And I think there's two camps, and I'd be very interested in your thoughts relative to this. I think there's two camps that you can fall into this. One, I do think that there's added value if you have a particular intimate knowledge that comes from experience, which is one of the benefits of identity politics. But two, it typically, the very forefront, alienates us one from another, no longer saying that, no, we're both images made, we're both individuals that have been made in the image of God, that we share this same country that was founded upon certain ideals, that all individuals are created equal. And identity politics, I think at the very core, tries to say, we're not going to be first united by our sameness and shared qualities, but we're going to be divided, one, by the things that differentiate us. And I just don't even like that. I see the value that comes from an individual that has experience or knows something because of the intimacy of their identity. But I just think it gets us off on the very first wrong foot by saying this is how we're different.
Right. I mean, I think that the point here for a lot of people isn't necessarily that she doesn't, quote unquote, belong to that group. The point is she lied and took advantage. And so, I wouldn't discount her ability to speak to something she's not a part of necessarily. It's more that she lied. She tried to take advantage of a system out there for a people group in our country who, like many of like the bad areas of our history, like they've been taken advantage of, right? Like it's disrespectful. And so that's more my point than it is necessarily even identity politics. Like maybe that was her draw to trade off of what she thought was her genetics. But just, I think it's just something that she should have been wiser about.
Yeah,
obviously.
I think there's a differentiation between, because, there's the common conception that politicians lie, right? Like they're saying that you say one thing on the campaign trail and then you don't fulfill it on when you actually get into office. And I understand that, but I don't think those are necessarily or always just forthright lies. Governing is a process.
I agree with
Governing
you.
is a
Yes.
process.
Yes.
It requires, one, there's an individual that can advocate for the issue, but two, you got to build a coalition to be able to get passage of the bill.
Right.
I think the problem I have here is that this isn't a governing issue. This is an identity. Like, you quite literally bold-faced lied about your ancestry, and you're vying for an office that you're going to have to put your hand. Well, optionally, you can put your hand on the Bible. I would hope, from just my opinion, I would hope you would put your hand on a Bible, especially since you claim to be Christian. I would hope. I just don't know how I can trust you to uphold the Constitution that you're being elected to protect when you have demonstrated just a callous inability to be able to tell the truth. But nevertheless,
Welcome to campaign season.
We have got to go take a break, and we'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Under a new law, South Dakota's public schools will now display the national motto on school property. But not everyone is very happy displaying "In God We Trust" on public property. One anti-religion activist called the idea exclusionary and aimed at brainwashing American school children. Well, the only brainwashing seems to come from anti-religion activists with a bent to exclude based on inaccurate information. Indeed, few words are more in keeping with our history and law than the national motto. Francis Scott Key included the line, "And this be our motto, in God is our trust," in the fourth verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. It went on our coins in 1864 and became the official motto of the United States in 1956, a year before it appeared on all currency. It's even displayed above the Speaker's rostrum in Congress. Every one of the 11 Circuit Courts of Appeal to consider the motto has deemed it constitutional. The Ninth Circuit has twice upheld the motto, explaining in one case that the motto has nothing whatsoever to do with the establishment of religion. So the next time you hear someone suggest that it violates the Constitution, just use the words of the Sixth Circuit who determined that a court removing the motto from government property would be ludicrous. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Hi, I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. I hope you enjoyed this episode of First Liberty Briefing. You can learn more amazing stories about how everyday Americans are standing up and saving religious freedom. Just visit firstliberty.org. You'll be inspired, educated, and informed. Visit firstliberty.org right now.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Fitz. I'm joined at the Millennial Roundtable by Chelsey Youman of Huco Action. And we have been talking a little bit about this apology that Elizabeth Warren, or Senator Elizabeth Warren, I want to give honor where honor is due, where she offered yesterday in Iowa on the campaign trail, apologizing for the harm that she has done, apologizing for the hurt that she has caused, because she has been claiming ancestry as a Native American. But what test results found out relative to DNA testing is that she has very little kind of I guess I think Cherokee citizenry, or not even citizenry, blood work. And it kind of goes back 6 to 10 generations to be able to find.
I think it's a pretty bold move that she had blood work done.
Yeah. Because
interesting.
everyone keeps on saying it was because President Trump kind of called her out on that, and so President Trump was the one that was affectionately referring to her as Pocahontas, as he is prone to do on Twitter, calling people names. And lo and behold, because of that, eventually she decided that enough was enough. She was going to take a test, and when she took the test, we found out that you have to go back 6 to 10 generations to be able 6 to 10 generations, 6 to 10 generations to be able to find kind of the strength of her ancestry relative to Native American. And Chelsey, this raises the question: she has offered an apology. Do we accept it, right? Because I think this goes back to research that we talked about a few months back, that it found that politicians or public servants, when they offer apologies, it's not necessarily good for them. It almost, to a certain degree, embitters might be the wrong word, but it does sour a voter's affinity for that particular candidate when they offer an apology. So should they? Is this a good thing for her to apologize? Is this a bad thing for her to apologize?
First of all, I think this is relatively old news. I remember hearing about this story, if not over a year ago before. So it just continues to follow her. She's continuing the narrative to a certain extent. I mean, she's continuing to apologize. I don't know when the blood work was done, but it's continuing to follow her, and it's become pretty much the only thing I really remember about her because I don't know that much about her, right? I know a little bit about her public service, but this is now the narrative I automatically think of when I hear her name. And so that's not beneficial to her. But you're right. The statistics showed apologies make people want to seek punishment rather than forgive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably going to be in play here a lot. She owed the public an apology. I don't know that she has to continue doing that, but that's what she's doing. She's making her apology to her. We saw Beto O'Rourke make his apology to her for a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm. But here's where I would say, though, there's a, and again, I know you said with
you'll never see Trump apologize.
No. Where I would see it, there's a differentiation to be made between what Senator Warren has done and what Beto O'Rourke in general has been doing, I should say. He was, to an extent, it seemed as though he was apologizing for every little thing when he was on the campaign tour. One of the things and here's where I would say I appreciate about Senator Warren. She did wrong, and she admitted wrong, and she said it was wrong. And then she is moving a new way forward. If the research holds, it's going to hurt her. Mm-hmm. But as a Christian, and Senator Warren is a Christian, I believe she is of the Methodist denomination. She was just in a Methodist, or maybe was either Methodist or Episcopalian. It was one of the two. She was in church on this past Sunday as well. I believe it was a South Carolina church that she was at. And so I would say, as a Christian, you're forgiven. You offering an apology is not contingent upon an individual receiving it or it being received well by the general public. As a Christian, when you do wrong, regardless of the circumstances, you have got to own up to it to your God, own up to it to the people that you have hurt, and then hopefully rectify your behavior in a way that is pleasing to the Lord, as well as in congruence with the commands that he gives. Now, that could come back and hurt you from a public opinion standpoint, but that probably should help you moving forward not to make the same type of mistakes. But, and this is, I think, where I don't think we disagree on this, but I do think that this isn't just going to be it's not just wrong that she did this, but it's going to be wrong moving forward. I think voters are going to hold her feet to the fire with this as well. It's going to hurt her moving forward.
Right. Well, they have so many other options to vote for in the primary. It's the beauty of our democratic process that if this is not your candidate, move on and vote for a different one for other reasons. So we'll really get to see what the priorities for the Democrats are in their primary.
Yeah, it will be interesting because, as we've said beforehand, she's in the top tier. She is one of the top tier Democratic candidates right now. Vice President Biden is leading the way. A recent poll put him out ahead, upwards of double digits now, from a national standpoint. Now, again, if you're listening, you're probably saying to yourself, well, the popular vote doesn't win. National polls don't really hold much measure. But I would contend that they do show the general trends and the mood that a particular candidate has right now. And you want that mood to be pretty high from a campaign standpoint, because during this time, you're trying to familiarize yourself with the campaign, familiarize yourself with individuals in early voting states. And more than that, you're trying to build up a coalition of support, both on the ground and within your financial coffers. And Vice President Biden has shown that he's been able to do that. And we'll see if Senator Warren is able to keep up the momentum there as well.
Do you know who's in second place?
So it's either it's usually Senator Sanders or Senator Warren or Kamala Harris, depending upon the day. They've been kind of going back and forth. Senator Harris is usually in fourth place, but it's usually either Sanders or Warren. They've been kind of going after that socialist vote, I guess you would say. Now, some of my Democratic friends might not say that it's a socialist vote, but it is a very
radical. We could say Nordic socialism, which is what I like to call it.
Yes.
It's a brand. It's a brand of socialism.
Yeah, it's just it's a radical departure from what our founders intended. I think would be a fair characterization.
Yeah, I would love for them to take a tour to China right now and go talk to them about the protesters.
China's great though.
Have you? But you know the protesters.
Oh yeah, from the protesters. Yeah.
See what they have to say about freedom.
Yeah.
And
anyways, neither here nor there. But okay,
feel free to call in and talk about that.
No, well, we've got to take a break right now, and so when we come back from the break, I'm really excited to talk with you all a little bit more. We've got a kind of a pretty interesting show continuing to move forward. We're going to double down a little bit, and we're going to talk about what's happening on college campuses right now. What's very interesting is that 59% of Republicans have a negative view of colleges. And that's a significant uptick from what it was in just a few years back. And so I'll be really interested to talk with you all, as well as open the phone calls, about what's fueling this rise of reticence, what's fueling this negativity that Republicans have towards college campuses. And then from a Christian perspective, should we have kind of a reticence? Should we have negative views relative to college campuses? And so Chelsey and I will talk about that. And we'll also be opening up the phone lines as well. We'll be welcoming a guest, Dr. Jack Goodyear of Dallas Baptist University. He's a dean of the Cook School of Leadership over there. Jack's a good friend. He's taught political science for a number of years, and so I'll be really interested to hear his thoughts relative to what's the rise of this. Is it warranted? Is it not warranted? We'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll also share a little bit more about what's happening in the news relative to Planned Parenthood, relative to the business roundtable, with this view now that individuals are believing it to be true that corporations don't only exist for shareholder value, but there's various stakeholders they need to appease, and so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we have got to go to a break, but when we come back from the break, more from Point of View right after this.
Point of View is committed to spreading the truth, oftentimes a truth that those in political power don't like getting heard. But the only way it can be heard is if our team stands strong together, if you do what you can to support the Point of View Truth Team. It's having an impact, as we heard recently from U.S. Representative Louis Gohmert.
Everywhere I go, I hear people that you have influenced, that Point of View has affected. You have made such a difference, and you rely on people to contribute, and if they don't contribute, then that truth does not get heard.
Help Point of View make a difference. Pray and consider what level is right for you. $30, $65, $100 a month, or even more. Please do what you can. 1-800-347-5151, or visit online, pointofview.net. Look near the top right for the link that says Become a Monthly Partner. Join the Truth Team, 800-347-5151, and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now,
Nick Pitts.
And welcome to Point of View on this Tuesday, August 20th, 2019 day. I'm your host, Nick Pitts, and this is the Millennial Roundtable. And joining me at the roundtable, we've got Chelsey Youman of HUCO.
Couple of
Action.
old millennials.
Old millennials that still
we
love...
need some younger millennials in here.
Still love us, some Oregon Trail, some... Were you good at Tetris?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh,
Really?
the Tetris, Super Mario.
What was your go-to... Were you video game family?
Well, we were girls, so
Okay, yeah.
not too much, but we did do some Donkey Kong Country at Super
Oh,
Nintendo.
Donkey Kong.
Is where we
Okay.
stopped.
My favorite, I can't tell you how many times my brother and I would do the imitation Donkey Kong where he's like slapping the ground. You know what I'm talking
I know
about?
exactly what you're talking about.
And so, but it was never a good look
Donkey
for us.
Kong made a revisit in my family over Christmas. My brother-in-law, who's like a super gamer, and I somehow bonded over it, and
Okay.
we like played for like all night, and we
Yeah.
like beat the game. And my husband was like so impressed with me. He was like, "I didn't know you were such a nerd." I was like, "I didn't either," but here we are. So,
But that's like, it's becoming like, there's a resurgence of this, right? So there's a resurgence on, but specifically it's around Mario Kart. Were you familiar with
yes,
Mario Kart?
I was never good at it, but I tried.
Yeah, same here. Whenever somebody would throw down, so Mario Kart was Mario and Luigi running around some type of go-kart track, and I was never good because they would always drop the bananas, and I just didn't have good
It wasn't
dexterity.
my vibe either.
Yeah. And so, but I did. I would say that I excelled at other things, but the reality is I didn't. But you all are probably wondering, what are they talking about right now? And I would say that we're talking about nothing, which is kind of like the show Seinfeld, which is an American classic, but we'll neither go here nor there. But we are so excited that you have decided to join us today. We have got quite a show for you. There is a new study out that increasingly Republicans are distrustful of college campuses. This number has increased drastically over the past couple of years. And so it was put out by Pew. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have on Jack Goodyear out of Dallas Baptist University later on during the show, to help us better understand, one, what's fueling this distrust among individuals, Republicans specifically, on the college campus or toward the college campus, and two, is there any differentiation that can be made between higher education campuses that are Christian in nature and non-Christian in nature, more secular? And so we'll be talking to him. Really excited. I'm pretty biased about Dr. Goodyear. He is a good friend. He's also a colleague of mine at Dallas Baptist University. He's always just has a keen insight into political matters, as well as just an understanding of kind of the cultural zeitgeist. And so we'll be talking about that. We'll also be addressing some other issues as well. So Facebook is in the news once again. The former Senator John Kyle of Arizona had an opportunity to be able to present before Facebook some of the grievances of those that are on the right, but then also to be able to share with Facebook ways that they can address this. And this was in a New York or Wall Street Journal op-ed that was just published within the day. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that. And then obviously we've got to be talking about the great news that happened yesterday when Planned Parenthood decided that they were going to stop their funding of stop receiving funds rather from Title X federal funding. And so what that means, the implications for that. But we'll be talking about a wide variety of things. So I want to be able to kind of give us a basis from which to move. And so one of the ways that you can connect with us today during the show is by jumping on the Point of View website at www.pointofview.net. And on the website, you're going to be able to find the information and some of the articles that we have been talking about. You can read up on those articles and then also be able to share and call in as well. This is going to be a conversation today. And so you can call in at 800-351-1212, and you can call in and add your voice to the Millennial Roundtable over these issues, as well as jump over on Facebook at www.facebook.com/pointofviewradio. What you share online, we're going to try to get to over the air during our time together, and so grateful that you have spent some time with us. But without further ado, Chelsey, let's get on Facebook because, I don't know about you, but I love to talk about it. And apparently poking is not something that you should do anymore. No.
Is that still a thing?
That is so a thing, I feel like. And so, no, I'm just kidding.
Your friends are.
And so the former Senator John Kyle of Arizona has put out a op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, Why Conservatives Don't Trust Facebook. From the Ivy League to Hollywood, former Senator Kyle says, Americans with traditional morals or conservative politics have often felt excluded from the country's elite culture-creating institutions. And Facebook asked him to conduct a survey to hear from conservatives directly. And following substantial public interest in the project and in light of policy changes Facebook has recently made, we decided to share their findings with them, Kyle writes. And so he found that conservatives generally fall within one of 6 buckets. And so I thought we'd just kind of make our way through this list. And I'm sure that we can find resonance with one of these lists. 1, content distribution and algorithms. Conservatives, Kyle writes, have expressed concern that a bias against their viewpoints may be baked into Facebook's algorithms. I think from your time at First Liberty a little while back, I know that you all expressed some hesitations and some frustrations relative to that.
So I can't tell you how many times at First Liberty Institute, which is the largest nonprofit in the country that works on religious liberty issues, how many times nonprofits that were faith-based or churches even had ads rejected, buried, profiles buried. They call it shadow banning. So there's actually a technical term for the technique that these conglomerates use. On Twitter, one great thing that they do is shadow banning. So as you're searching for in the search bar, like you're searching for a certain profile, it's at the bottom or it's buried, and they just bump the conservatives down. And I found actually a master list. Somebody did some group did a full study, and it was a master list on profiles that had officially been shadow banned or blocked over the last 3 years in the public, in the political realm, I should say. 2 on the list were quote unquote liberals, but they had been very racist in their public statements. The rest were all conservatives, whether they were congressmen or public speakers. So some of this has been quantifiable. So yes, I would agree with that bucket.
Yeah. So there's not only the content distribution, but the second item on their list, second item on Kyle's list that he aggregated is content policies. He says, quote, Facebook's community standards prohibit hate speech, graphic violence, sexual activity, cruel and insensitive content. Several interviewees pointed to the highly subjective, ever-evolving nature of some of these standards, in particular the term hate speech. And I think all of us, I know, you're smiling right now.
I've got 2 real life examples that I will not publicly say who they are. One was an Easter ad for church on a Sunday that had bunnies, eggs, and children dressed up. That was banned, quote unquote, some kind of bias in the bunny, maybe. I don't know. And the other was a client who contacted us for ads. They just wanted to place an employment ad and say, hey, apply if you care about our nonprofit and the work we're doing. And those ads were blocked. And then there was another type of ad blocked for like donations, like just to donate to the nonprofit.
We're not going to block Chelsey right now, but we are going to go to a break and we'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Last month was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth, or was it? A number of news stories proclaimed that the month of July 2019 was even hotter than July 2016. That made it the hottest month on record. Climatologist Dr. Roy Spencer argues that July 2019 was not the warmest on record. He acknowledged that it was the hottest based upon global average surface air temperatures, but he rightly explains that those temperature measurements have three major problems. Let me focus on just two of them. The urban heat island effect has caused a gradual warming of land thermometer sites because of such factors as buildings, parking lots, air-conditioned units, and vehicles of various types. The impact of this may be localized but still affects the overall temperature measurements. Another measurement comes from ocean temperatures, but these apparently are uncertain due to changing measurement technologies as well as influence from ship engine intakes and buoys. We now have satellite measurements, but only since 1983. He therefore recommends meteorologists use the reanalysis data that is available from NOAA's climate forecast system. We can put a map on the Point of View website. If you look at it, you will notice it matches your own weather experience last month. For example, much of the Midwest all the way to parts of Texas actually had cooler than normal temperatures in July. So why don't scientists track global temperatures using these reanalysis data sets? Well, they only go back a few decades and don't provide a longer look. The longest record of temperature data comes from surface thermometers. Dr. Spencer believes that July 2019 was probably the fourth hottest month in the last 4 decades. Unfortunately, all the headlines said that it was the hottest ever. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Affirm Films and the Kendrick Brothers, Overcomer, starring Alex Kendrick and Priscilla Shire, rated PG, in theaters this Friday. Overcomermovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. I'm joined by Chelsey Youman of Huco Action. And, Chelsey and I were talking about over the break. Sometimes I think you might have thoughts in your mind relative to, I wonder what they're actually talking about over the break. But I had to go back to this Twitter thread that has been captivating my attention and some of the group messages that I'm a part of about what your favorite chicken sandwich is. And so this is like a thing that's happening right now on Twitter right now. Is it Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich? Is it Popeye's chicken sandwich? Is it Wendy's chicken sandwich? Shake Shack, KFC, Burger King? I mean, these are the things that keep millennials up at night. What's your favorite chicken sandwich?
Rather talk about this then.
But I mean, honestly, though, I think it's very clear cut. I'm a Christian. I love the Lord, and I think the Lord loves Chick-fil-A. No, I'm just kidding.
Chick-fil-A's up there.
It's up there.
It's up there.
I think it's really good. It's really hard to beat. I appreciate KFC though. KFC's always goes very creative.
You're from Tennessee.
Yeah, I know. It's at the core. Even though it's Kentucky Fried Chicken, you just lump together two states. But it's cool though. It's cool.
Statement.
It's like there's Texas and then there's everybody else, right?
Kind of You're like Old South, right? Same thing.
Okay, but in all seriousness, we have been talking about Facebook right now, and there's a great, and this is, if you are conservative in nature or if you have been aware of some of the policies of Facebook and thinking about, well, Facebook has been biased towards conservatives, you can take heart and be encouraged right now, because little did anyone really know, but now what we're finding out is the former senator from Arizona, John Kyle, was working with Facebook over the past recent months to be able to, one, survey the concerns of conservatives that they have with the social media behemoth. And then two, in turn, Facebook has responded with some concrete steps that they're looking to take. And so we've gone over the first two concerns that conservatives have had: content distribution and algorithms, content policies, and the third being content enforcement. And so here's what former Senator Kyle says. Interviewees were concerned that the biases of Facebook employees who enforce the rules may result in disproportionate censoring of conservatives. Now, we've known that to be true. Like, if you remember back about 2 years ago when they had the trending, I don't know if you remember on the vertical that Facebook had on their website, there was the trending. News did break out that they had individuals that were censoring or were disproportionately putting greater weight on liberal or progressive issues and causes. And that was verifiable. It was very much in the news. And so that it's good to know that this was made the list of the 6 things that he had a qualm with. But Chelsey, I want to go up to the fourth one, because I think you've had some personal experience with this. And so the fourth one concerns ad policies. And so in the wake of the strong evidence from the U.S. intelligence community that Russia attempted to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, Facebook required advertisers to register as political organizations in order to post ads with a political or policy focus. Some conservative interviewees said this new rule jeopardized their status as nonprofits under Section 501c3 of the tax code. So this idea of advocating for political issues, even though they're a nonprofit entity, caused them to have some qualms with the law.
Right. So there's a few things to speak about here. First and foremost, one of the questions I got asked the most as a religious liberty attorney in my time at First Liberty Institute was always a fear that their nonprofit's tax-exempt status would be revoked for any political speech whatsoever. And first, that goes back to something called the Johnson Amendment, which, fun fact, has never actually been enforced.
Yeah.
Almost
1974,
60. Yeah, 50. I can't do the math.
Yeah.
I'm an attorney, guys.
Years ago.
But a number of years ago, it's never been enforced. I mean, it's not really a viable fear, but it is one that nonprofits are very, very aware of and try. And I think this should get airtime. They try very much to be very respectful of those boundaries and rules and not delve too far across those lines. But what if they have a social issue they care about that maybe some would classify as political? Are they allowed to speak to it or not? And of course, I'm such a free speech advocate. The truth is they should be able to speak to those issues. But sometimes even non-political messages would get locked out. Are we talking about ad?
So now this is what you're
content?
this will go down into it, because this is the fifth concern that Senator Kyle put down. He said ad enforcement as a result of Facebook's new, more stringent ad policies. Interviewees said that ad approval process has slowed significantly. Some fear that the new process may be designed to disadvantage conservative ads in the wake of Trump's campaign's successful use of social media in 2016.
Right. So, I mean, I have so many real world experiences that of clients reaching out to me anonymous. I'll keep them anonymous here, but putting up ads for things like Easter Sunday or an ad for employment we'll talk about a little bit later, or an ad about their nonprofit. Hey, this is the type of work we do. Would you like to support us? Anything in that nature, they've all been screened. And one of the questions they would have is an individual who has to individually approve each ad. Do they have a bias against Christians, against those missions? Some of them might even be going to their website and looking up their statements of faith and discounting their ads for those reasons. So there's a whole host of way that human error, human bias would play into the approval process of this. So I'm really glad that he highlighted that for Facebook.
And now we're just talking about externally, but we also have to talk about internally as well. And this was the sixth point that Senator Kyle made. He said workforce viewpoint diversity. He said, quote, several interviewees noted the overall lack of viewpoint diversity throughout Facebook's workforce and senior management. And so that goes back to what we found out probably about a little over a year ago, where an individual was fired for kind of espousing his conservative beliefs, not necessarily at the corporate level, but just in workplace conversation in a chat that they were on.
Well, to be fair, any human institution is going to have room for human error, human bias, and fallacy, right? Like even in churches, we say that all the time, that we're imperfect congregants making up an imperfect church, right? Everyone just does their best. And so to give charitable interpretation to Facebook, I would say maybe their employees don't even know they have a bias, or they're based out of an area that's so indoctrinated in the views of the left that they genuinely think that Easter Sunday church ad is rooted in Christian bigotry, right? So some people just don't know the bias they have. But in our experience, anytime we've advocated for a client to Facebook, their ads have changed. They've been approved. So I do see that Facebook is actively trying to work on the process. I hope they're successful in doing that for reasons we can talk about in a minute.
And so here's one of the things that we can be super encouraged by, because now they've gone back and they haven't just allowed former Senator Kyle to be able to address his concerns that he has with Facebook. They've gone above and they've gone beyond and said, not only have we heard this, but we're responding to it as well. And so here are some of the changes that have now occurred because of this. They announced in this Wall Street Journal opinion op-ed, and they said, quote, there's an oversight board, which is, quote, Facebook announced plans last month for an oversight board to hear appeals of some more difficult content removal decisions. If structured to reflect accurately the diverse ideological and religious views of Facebook's user base, the board may help ensure content decisions are made thoughtfully and free from inappropriate bias. This is a good thing.
That's
right?
great.
That's great news to have.
We want to remedy the situation, and to see that is really good.
And second point, explanation of newsfeed rankings, right? So to foster user trust in the algorithms that influence content placement, Facebook has launched its transparency tools that explain to users why they see certain content on their news feeds. I don't know if any of our listeners have ever tried to delve into understandings of the way that algorithms work on Facebook. They're ever evolving one, and it always seems as though certain conservative voices or individuals get silenced in this. But this is very helpful.
Yes. Anytime you hear the word algorithm, I automatically think like the deep state, right? Like there's somebody who is in a room by themselves, like hiding stuff. I don't understand the process. It's not intuitive to me. And so what do you do when there's inherent mistrust in a process? What our government does, transparency.
Yeah.
FOIA requests, Public Information Act requests. Like, this is Facebook's version of that. I think it's a great remedy.
I always just imagine that I'm in the secret garden and I don't know how to get out. And so I guess that's just like a recurring nightmare
yours is
of mine.
a lot less creepy than mine. It is literally someone in a warehouse.
Okay, so third is staffing. Facebook has hired 4 additional people devoted exclusively to working with smaller organizations to resolve questions and complaints about content decisions. 5, ad labeling requirements. To avoid incorrectly branding ads as political, Facebook renamed its ad library and now refers instead to ads about social issues, elections, or politics. And then finally, ad policies. Facebook has changed its ad policies that prohibit images of patients with medical tubes as shocking and sensational content, which is huge for the pro-life.
Well, yes, not even just for pro-life, though. Yes, it is a lot of pro-life issues where anytime some conservative groups that I know have tried to put up actual photos that would be viable and used in the news on Facebook, they were blocked.
And we will be back right after this.
We live in a digital generation. Point of View is reaching this often overly plugged-in generation with truth. You can keep up with us 24 hours a day using your phone, your tablet, your laptop, or your desktop. Search for the Point of View Radio Talk Show on Facebook, where you can keep up with today's issues, learn about current and upcoming guests by liking us on Facebook. Also, follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @PointOfViewRTS. That stands for Point of View Radio Talk Show. Learn, interact, make a difference with Point of View using new media. And here's one way you can make a big difference. Help us increase our reach by spreading the word among your friends. Share a Facebook post. Tag us in a tweet. With enough joining us to plant seeds, we'll see a tremendous harvest. Come on, it only takes a minute. Search for Point of View Radio Talk Show on Facebook, @PointOfViewRTS on Twitter, and subscribe to the Point of View Radio Talk Show channel on YouTube. Learn, interact, share. The Point of View Radio Talk Show. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Nick Pitts.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts, and I am joined at the Millennial Roundtable, or I should say, I think we're going to be detectives now, Chelsey. I think we're going to have to move into this space. And so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about what it seems like everyone is talking about right now in America, especially the Twitterverse right now, relative to Jeffrey Epstein. And so there has been a preponderance of theories, of conspiracies, of just so much information that has come out about Jeffrey Epstein. This is the individual, the sex trafficker. Jeffrey Epstein signed a will, what we found out yesterday, just 2 days before he died by suicide in a New York jail. But even just that short sentence that I just said, there's so many questions that are raised because there are individuals, one, on the New York coroner's office that would say that some of his injuries they could have been suicide, but they also could have been an individual that suffered a violent strangling death. There's the sex trafficker, which just kind of gets to the very crux of this Jeffrey Epstein story, of the idea that this is just an individual that was allowed to be able to prey on women and just commit evil acts for a number of years. And he was an individual that had a significant sum of money. Court records show that he left an estate valued at $577 million, which is caused, and then he gravitated towards powerful individuals, from business leaders to political leaders on both sides of the aisle, and has raised, where our animated conversation has happened, so many questions as to was this
let's do a couple more background facts because I think it would help maybe our audience is very familiar with this. I still have some questions. Like, I heard that he had an island, a private island, and that there was a lot of trafficking done on that island. Do you have any information about, was it a big ring that he was running?
Yep.
That he was on trial for?
Yep. He was on trial for trafficking girls as young as 14 years old. A lot of it took place in this island that's known, that came commonly to be referred to as Pedophilia Island. That there were individuals that you had to fly there, obviously, that were flown into this island. And former President Clinton has denied that he was on this island. But one of the things they found is a painting. I don't know if it was from the island house or was from his New York house. You have this picture of former President Clinton in this blue dress.
So it's a painting of President Clinton dressed in drag.
And so all this today, there's so many conspiracy theories out there.
Right. Do we know what his connection with the Clintons was? That's my biggest question.
He was a financier of some of their campaigns. But we don't know much else relative to that.
So based on a couple random fun facts I'm going to bring to the table.
Okay.
This is what led me to start buying into these conspiracies, which I kind of love to delve into anyways. But first and foremost, there are many culprits that we have to like give credence where it's due, that there are many victims of this individual and his crimes and his lifestyle. There are many women whose lives will never be the same because of these individuals and the ring he had. And there's a lot of evil out there. And, that really grieves me and makes me sad. And clearly he was caught up in a lot of that evil because the big conspiracies out there are that him going to trial, things were going to come to light about the Clintons and some of these other high-powered individuals, that people didn't want that information out. And so that someone essentially offed him, I guess, for lack of a better word. A few of the strange facts were an insider released his death to a news outlet 2 hours before first responders were there. So someone knew about the death occurring in the jail cell before first responders were there. A second was witnesses say they heard screaming from his jail cell. Yeah. So that would lead to a more violent picture than necessarily a suicide. And then the third thing I heard that was kind of strange, that even Steve back there is making fun of me for, is the one of the guards on shift change when he was leaving, a guard came in that he had never seen before, and he said, "What's your name?" And the guard said, "Steve." And he said, "Steve what?" And the guard looked around, for lack of a better word, and said, "Steve Jail."
Wow.
And presumably had no business being there. And so that's a little bit of some of the reasons I know conspiracies have arisen.
Yeah, and you know what's fascinating? It's just it goes back to just the lack of trust is the reason why I think there's so many conspiracies that are revolving around.
But to be fair, it's not that absurd to think that high-powered individuals who are in charge of involved in a sex ring would not murder someone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all
agree.
heinous, evil people.
So here's where I would not differentiate from you, but I would just add to the conversation and say this. So I don't know what I believe about conspiracy theories right now relative to this particular situation. But here's what I do know. Just running research would indicate that conspiracy theories are going to rise when trust levels continue to decrease. When we don't trust the official reports that come out, we start spinning off our own theories as to what potentially could happen. What I do know that's happening right now in the American experiment is that we're at record low levels of trust right now. We don't trust churches. We don't trust higher education institutions. We don't trust government. We have a higher favorability of Nickelback and SpongeBob than of Congress right now. Like there is just low levels of trust right now within government officials. So that when something happens at a jail cell, the most illuminated, prominent inmate that we have in the jail system right now, when he is offed, when he dies, after just trying to attempt suicide 10 days prior, not even 2 weeks prior, they take him mysteriously off suicide watch. And then all of a sudden he commits suicide. And there's all of these, he didn't really die.
There are weird facts.
There are a lot of weird facts, which I'm just saying, like, I don't know what I'm going to believe. I don't know what I've concluded yet about the idea or the viability of a conspiracy theory. But I do know the ingredients are present. And because the ingredients are present with these interesting details that
I'm going to go with it. I'm all in. I'm all in. I just want to know more about his connection with the Clintons and what that's about.
But it's not even just here's where I would tell
it does matter. It does matter.
It does. And this is the part that sickens me, but it's the part that also sickens me on both sides. It's not just a Clinton side. It's not just a left side. I mean, there's connections as well to individuals on the right as well. And so that should sicken us. But the reality is the entire situation should sicken us because for some strange reason, this man was still allowed to prance around in the public square even after he had suffered these indictments. When he was in jail the previous time, he was able to purchase little girl panties from the jail cell. Yeah, what we're finding out, he was allowed to buy small women's panties at a Palm Beach jail, according to a report from the Daily Breeze. We've got stories that are coming out right now.
There are things I probably don't want to know.
Yeah,
I can't forget them.
3 women. Or here's another story. He was sent 3 12-year-old French girls as a birthday gift. This was allowed to prance around and allowed to be common knowledge, but yet we still didn't do anything about it. And now this individual won't. I don't want to say he won't receive justice because I believe it to be true from the Christian perspective, according to Hebrews 13, that it is a fearful thing to be in the hands of the living God. Like, I think justice will be enacted this side of eternity. I know that he's got that. What hurts me is that the individuals that have been victimized by him, now there is the potential that individuals that were tied to him might be able to go free. And that's the thing that sickens me about this entirety of the situation.
You know, I have to say I'm maybe this is me being naive or showing a bias here for attorneys, but if anything, there are now more facts.
Yeah.
And now there's more suspects
agree.
And now there's more strings to track down. I mean, if anything, it's going to broaden the circle in my mind on the investigation, because if he was murdered, which I'm going to go ahead and just vote that way based on the things I've seen, that now means there's highly motivated individuals who don't want his testimony. And you better believe prosecutors are going to be down this track. They want to know who's tampering with witnesses, if witnesses aren't going to be safe. I mean, now we've broadened the circle. And so I do hope that justice is eventually found for these girls. I don't know that it'll ever remedy what they've been through.
No.
But really, sex trafficking, if anything, I hope this is more in the limelight.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope we're awake as a country and paying attention to what's been happening in our midst and for children in our midst. I mean, we live right next to the I-35 corridor, is 4 miles from here?
Yeah.
It's something to be aware of.
Okay, so think about this. So in the past decade, child pornography arrests have increased 2,500%. 67% of sexual offenders committed offenses against children. There are more than 747,000 registered sex offenders in the U.S. As many as 30,000 are missing or non-compliant. The Justice Department estimates that roughly 300,000 American youth are currently at risk for becoming victims of commercial sexual exploitation. I hope this story does not die down simply for the reason that, one, these individuals that have been wronged might get justice and might see those individuals that did these wrongs be brought to justice. But also, two, it illuminates a much bigger story and a sickness that's been burbling underneath the surface. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Under a new law, South Dakota's public schools will now display the national motto on school property. But not everyone is very happy displaying "In God We Trust" on public property. One anti-religion activist called the idea exclusionary and aimed at brainwashing American school children. Well, the only brainwashing seems to come from anti-religion activists with a bent to exclude based on inaccurate information. Indeed, few words are more in keeping with our history and law than the national motto. Francis Scott Key included the line, "And this be our motto, in God is our trust," in the 4th verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. It went on our coins in 1864 and became the official motto of the United States in 1956, a year before it appeared on all currency. It's even displayed above the Speaker's rostrum in Congress. Every one of the 11 Circuit Courts of Appeal to consider the motto has deemed it constitutional. The 9th Circuit has twice upheld the motto, explaining in one case that the motto has nothing whatsoever to do with the establishment of religion. So the next time you hear someone suggest that it violates the Constitution, just use the words of the 6th Circuit who determined that a court removing the motto from government property would be ludicrous. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Hi, I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. I hope you enjoyed this episode of First Liberty Briefing. You can learn more amazing stories about how everyday Americans are standing up and saving religious freedom. Just visit firstliberty.org. You'll be inspired, educated, and informed. Visit firstliberty.org right now.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts, and I am joined by Chelsey Youman of Huco Action. And we have been talking a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein and some of the conspiracies that have been circulating around his untimely death. And so we're going to transition a little bit just because, honestly, I think both of us were I think we could talk about the conspiracy theories, but then eventually it forces us to have to go back to the facts of the case, and the facts of the case are kind of discouraging, to say the very least. But we do think that it's appropriate at times, even though it might be hard to handle to be able to stare at the face some of these just uncomfortable conversations that are being forced to be had just because what is now being paraded in the light is something that's been percolating in the dark for far too long. And as Christians, we believe it to be true that we need to be individuals of Issachar that know the sign of the time so that we might be able to be the bright lights and the salt of the earth that helps restore the goodness in this broken world that we've been living in. But there's also other news that's happening right now. I am angry, says a Sacramento business owner being forced to relocate due to the homelessness issue. And so, Chelsey, I don't know if you ran across this, but I thought this was so fascinating. There's a business owner named Elizabeth Novak, packed up her salon and moved out of Sacramento due to mounting problems from homelessness in the California capital. She told Fox News Monday, and that the issue is disheartening. She says, quote, "I'm angry about it as well. I wouldn't be relocating if this wasn't the issue." Per 2019, she had a post that went viral in which she blasted California Governor Newsom via Twitter, complaining that government inaction leaves residents and business owners like her having to clean up after homeless people who sleep on streets and sidewalks. She said, quote, "When I come into work, I'm never sure what I'm going to walk into. I've been broken into. I've had my glass broken. I clean up human excrement off my doorstep every week. Things like that." She added, "I do have compassion for these people, but they're sleeping in front of your door and they're leaving trash and they're turning over garbage cans. I just can't do it anymore." Chelsey, thoughts?
My heart goes out to everyone involved in this situation, not to be a middle child about it, but we do have to have compassion for the homeless, for those who, for whatever reason, don't have a job. Sometimes it's mental illness, sometimes it's addiction, sometimes it's circumstances. I read an article about part of the reason homelessness has increased consistently lately is because rent prices, the cost of living is higher than ever, but like salaries and wages have stagnated a bit on that front. And so there's a lot of reasons for it. There's going to be broader policy perspectives. My heart goes out to her, though. I know a great example of this would be Austin. I was in Austin, Texas last week, and they recently had the city council voted to say loitering and homelessness is no longer illegal. You can't call the police unless there's actual violence or theft, an actual crime being committed. Well, the homeless population has increased downtown so much. They're sleeping on the corners, they're sleeping everywhere, but they're also going down into the neighborhoods just down off of South Congress. And for my friend who is a single mom living down there, she was scared. She couldn't go on. She was scared to go on walks. Sometimes they yell things at her. Sometimes they follow her. Sometimes you have to think through mechanisms that are going to regulate and protect your citizens from issues.
So here's one of the things that I would say that frustrates. I'll just say it frustrates me because I do think the government has a role to play in the homelessness situation. And so what we know to be true is that Governor Newsom has been deciding to give his attention elsewhere. And I'm not here. Listen, I'm not trying to say that he can only do one thing.
It doesn't have to be either or, right?
He can do multiple things. I'm just wondering where he's putting his emphasis on. So if we remember a couple of weeks back, Governor Newsom made news because he signed a bill requiring President Trump to release tax returns in order to be able to qualify for the California ballot. And so, I understand he's trying to make this political national play on the scene in order to, one, earn prominence, two, to add credibility in the California Democratic contention. But this, as you know, Chelsey, these situations typically lead me down a research rabbit hole. And sometimes they're illuminating. Other times they can just be kind of frustrating. But so bear with me for a second. So the LA Times has recently documented the, quote, colonies of football-sized rats in the state. The Times documented a, quote, mountain of rotten, oozing, stinking trash stretching a good 20 yards along a Skid Row alley. This mountain of garbage attracts rats, which brings salmonella and fleas that have been infected with typhus. LA County reported 124 cases of typhus last year. Unfortunately, the trash isn't the only waste on the streets. We can go to San Francisco, where there were more than 25,000 reported instances of human defecation. In 2011, that number was 5,000. LA County has seen a 12% increase in their homelessness population, with about 59,000 people living on the streets or in cars. 59,000. The rising cost of living has caused teachers to flee, with the East Bay District losing almost 20% of its teachers each year. Imagine that, 20% of teachers leaving each year. Concerning infrastructure, a recent study by the Bay Area Council Economic Institute put California's unfunded infrastructure needs at $737 billion. A 2017 study found that state and local governments owe upwards of $1.3 trillion as of June 2015. Here's my contention. I understand Governor Newsom and Democrats' desire to see President Trump release his tax returns. I understand that. I wish President Trump would release his tax returns.
They've got work to do.
But they've got other work to do.
They got
some big rats.
And we know that California, they have so many taxes. I mean, my sister lives there, so I can talk about it a little bit, but I mean, it's absurd what they're paying to live there for cost of living. Where's the money going?
Yeah.
Where?
Well, apparently it's not going to the colonies of football-sized rats.
Yeah, I know. I can't speak too much to the local, but I do know that I read an article last week about one of the reasons Rudy Giuliani was so successful in turning around New York City. Yeah. So when he went to New York City, there was a multi-billion-dollar deficit. Crime was at an all-time high. Mafia levels were high. Homelessness was high. You name it. And he started what he called the Broken Window Project, which was to do small things in your streets to let people know there's oversight in a government that does care, and that is they fixed broken windows. They started with cleaning up the trash in the streets and increased things like patrols for the PD to patrol the streets. And the way that he tackled these issues overall brought a 70% decrease in his time in crimes. Mm-hmm. Let the people know that there was going to be oversight. Yeah. But also he got to a $2 billion surplus in his time there. Yes. I mean, there are ways use policies to fix and rectify issues.
There are things that can be done. And this isn't just
nothing is too far gone.
Yeah, this isn't just trying to, because again, this homelessness situation, this is very tragic. There are ways that you can address this, but one of the ways to not address it is by giving your attention to national issues when you've been elected to serve your local constituents,
or encouraging it,
and
which some local laws do.
And so I know you can do I know you can do two things at once, but I would say that your emphasis needs to be on the colonies of football-sized rats.
Take care of your backyard. Take care of your own.
But nevertheless, we are going to take a break right now, but when we come back from the break, we are going to continue tackling the news of the day. And I'm really interested in this Pew Research poll about Republicans growing distrust of the college campus. You're going to be shocked by the numbers behind this, but we'll be back right after this.
Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? America needs Christians to be informed and as unified as possible, applying God's wisdom to civic life. Point of View can be a key part of a successful mission. I believe in America. I believe God wants His best for us. We can face whatever the world throws at us as long as we stand together. If you have not signed on, please do it now. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Set up your monthly gift by clicking the Truth Team 360 picture and then carefully follow the directions. Pointofview.net. By phone, you can give at 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Or call us 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now,
Nick Pitts.
And welcome to Point of View. My name is Nick Pitts. I'm joined at the Millennial Roundtable by Chelsey Youman of Huco Action. And we have had quite a show already. We're at the halfway mark. We've been talking about everything from Senator Warren going off to Iowa to apologize to individuals, to Native Americans because of some of the comments that she has made in the past. We moved over a little bit, and we're talking about angry business leaders and how some individuals, there was a woman in a woman in Sacramento that expressed frustration because of the rise in homelessness and some of the pollution that had happened and some of the break-ins that she had to move. But I want you to know the good topics don't stop at this particular point. They continue forward into the new hour. We're going to be joined by Dr. Jack Goodyear of Dallas Baptist University. The Dean of the Cook School of Leadership is going to be joining us to talk about a recent Pew study that indicated that Republicans have a growing distrust and kind of sour taste in their mouth regarding college campuses. Dr. Goodyear is going to help us better understand why that foment of distrust is happening among individuals in the Republican Party. And two, is there a differentiation to be made between Christian college campuses and then college campuses in general? And then we're also going to be talking about the news that just continues to populate news feeds right now relative to Planned Parenthood and the decision to not accept Title X funding, what that means from a Christian perspective as well. But since this is the Millennial Roundtable, Chelsey, I think we're going to have to give the people what they want right now. Mm-hmm. And the Twitterverse Twitter is exploding right now in debate involving a chicken sandwich. Okay, so for our audience, I just need you to know that Twitter right now, there is an ongoing debate about what is the best type of chicken sandwich. And so you've got, in one corner, you've got Chick-fil-A. In another corner, you've got Popeyes, which has a new chicken sandwich that supposedly is out of this world. I have a friend in Denver right now that just had a chicken sandwich for lunch from Popeyes, went 10 minutes outside of his way, and said it's the best chicken sandwich he's ever had.
Wow.
And so we've got Popeyes.
Surprising.
Then you've got the classic. You've got Wendy's that has just been a tried and true spicy chicken sandwich. You've got Shake Shack. Some people are more prone to that. KFC, which is always trying out random concoctions and whatnot. And then Burger King, which is kind of like a chicken sub more than a chicken sandwich. But I'm going to put it on you now.
Yeah.
And so you're being put on the spot right now. You're in the hot seat right now. You've got to answer for the people of Twitter. What is your preferred chicken sandwich of the fast food variety?
It's got to be Chick-fil-A. It's embarrassing how much my family with little ones, we get Chick-fil-A like 3 times a week. But it's so good. But I was raised on the spicy chicken sandwich at Wendy's is like a good classic.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
I don't actually eat that now, but if I thought about it.
So tell me, what swayed you toward the Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich?
It's very like hearty.
Okay.
So I like a big burger, right?
Okay,
I don't want like a
Don't
quarter
we all?
pounder. I want like a half pounder, and I would say their chicken is the equivalent of like a half pounder. Like it's a good hearty chicken.
That's fair. That's fair. I appreciate that.
Chick-fil-A's best.
So just the heartiness of the
And they
sandwich.
love the Lord, and I can just tell that.
I mean, that's very clear that they love the. Did you know that Chick-fil-A, they make double the revenue of McDonald's per restaurant, even though they're closed on Sundays?
Yes, I've heard this.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I think
it's because on Sundays when you want Chick-fil-A, they're not there, so you got to go get it.
And you got to go twice on Monday, I think. And so they've been named the favorite fast food restaurant. So I'm gonna have to go with the tried and true right now. And so like you said, I appreciate the heartiness of a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Where I spend my money is Chick-fil-A, but I need you to know that I got to return to my first love, and my first love is Wendy's. Like that.
Yes, Wendy's is so classic.
Okay, but here's where I would say though, where you wanted heartiness of a chicken sandwich, the spicy bite that came from a Wendy's chicken sandwich is just compelling, to say the very least.
I haven't had lunch. This is not fun for me right now.
Okay, so speaking of, we've got to transition because we can't just keep on talking about chicken sandwiches. Apparently.
We could
keep on talking, but then it would end in too good a place, and so and we're not getting paid by Chick-fil-A or anyone to talk about their sandwiches. So, in other news, there was a press conference that was held yesterday. So 2 members of the squad in the House of Representatives have been making news. The squad. Don't you love how you probably love how I say this? And so an emotional Michigan Representative Rashida Tlaib on Monday held back tears during a news conference as she and Minnesota Representative Omar condemned Israel's recent decision to impose restrictions on visiting the country, with Democrats calling for Congress to get involved. Omar said in a press conference, "We in the United States have a constructive role to play. We give Israel more than $3 billion in aid every year. This is predicated on them being an important ally in the region and the only democracy in the Middle East. But denying a visit to a duly elected members of Congress is not consistent with being an ally." And so if you'll remember, these 2 individuals were on the receiving end of a ban by Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, because of some of their remarks and participation in what's known as the BDS movement. And so it's calling for boycotts and divestments and sanctions against the state of Israel. But you wouldn't even know that if you just looked at their congressional manifesto for their travel. They were calling Israel Palestine, and they have been active and they've had a history of some anti-Semitic remarks. And now it seems as though they're trying to make a big deal out of this now, Chelsey, which again is, there's a host of reasons why I find this problematic. I'd love to hear your comments on this.
Well, I will add just one fact to help color the situation. President Trump supposedly, and you might be able to speak to this as well, encouraged the prime minister of Israel to implement the ban.
Yeah, he has actively encouraged President Benjamin Netanyahu to, we don't know to the degree, but we do know that he tweeted out that he should not, Benjamin Netanyahu should not allow these individuals.
So it's all about framing, right? So these individuals are going to frame it as, this doesn't look like democracy. It doesn't look like they're our ally because we're elected officials and we are not welcome. And you could also frame it like the prime minister of Israel is protective of his country, and it's a show of strength on his part to say, we ally with the U.S. I'm going to follow what President Trump encourages us to do, but also because of your views on the West Bank and wanting to make a Palestinian state, those don't bode well for an alliance with Israel either, right? Their statements don't bode well for an alliance with Israel.
Yeah.
So it could be seen as a show of strength in a diplomatic sense to say they couldn't come. By the way, he didn't say you couldn't come. He said you could come to visit your grandma in the West Bank.
And that was when I'm reading from her remarks, and you do bring up a great point. So Representative Tlaib was giving special permission to come visit for humanitarian reasons.
Right, humanitarian reasons, but not diplomatic reasons.
Yeah, and she chose against that because she said, if you're not going to allow me to essentially she said, if you're not going to allow me to protest as a duly elected member of Congress, then I'm not going to come over there. We'll continue to talk about this, as well as I want to get to Planned Parenthood, and I know we got to go to a break. And so we'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Last month was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth, or was it? A number of news stories proclaimed that the month of July 2019 was even hotter than July 2016. That made it the hottest month on record. Climatologist Dr. Roy Spencer argues that July 2019 was not the warmest on record. He acknowledged that it was the hottest based upon global average surface air temperatures, but he rightly explains that those temperature measurements have three major problems. Let me focus on just two of them. The urban heat island effect has caused a gradual warming of land thermometer sites because of such factors as buildings, parking lots, air-conditioned units, and vehicles of various types. The impact of this may be localized but still affects the overall temperature measurements. Another measurement comes from ocean temperatures, but these apparently are uncertain due to changing measurement technologies as well as influence from ship engine intakes and buoys. We now have satellite measurements, but only since 1983. He therefore recommends meteorologists use the reanalyst data that is available from NOAA's climate forecast system. We can put a map on the Point of View website. If you look at it, you will notice it matches your own weather experience last month. For example, much of the Midwest all the way to parts of Texas actually had cooler than normal temperatures in July. So why don't scientists track global temperatures using these reanalyst data sets? Well, they only go back a few decades and don't provide a longer look. The longest record of temperature data comes from surface thermometers. Dr. Spencer believes that July 2019 was probably the fourth hottest month in the last 4 decades. Unfortunately, all the headlines said that it was the hottest ever. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Affirm Films and the Kendrick Brothers, Overcomer, starring Alex Kendrick and Priscilla Shire, rated PG, in theaters this Friday. Overcomermovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. I'm joined at the Millennial Roundtable by the one and only Chelsey Youman of Huco Action. I did it so well the past 4 times.
You did really good. It's Human Coalition Action.
Yes, and help our audience to better understand this, because I want them to know the great work that you're doing. And sometimes I feel excited. like I just botch it all the time.
No, you don't botch it at all. Human Coalition is a nonprofit that is dedicated to serving pregnant women in their most desperate time of need. So they have operate about almost 40 clinics nationwide that they reach women and work to really build a sustainable lifestyle for pregnant women and stabilize their circumstances to really make abortion unthinkable and unavailable across the U.S. And they got to thinking and said, one of the reasons Planned Parenthood has been so successful is that they have a government relations arm. They have a C4 lobbying group. And so they decided to really be a true contender with Planned Parenthood. They needed to open an advocacy branch of the organization. And so I am the Texas State Director now of Human Coalition Action, and we're dedicated to empowering those who help women on the daily basis through using grassroots mechanisms and the governing officials to really get our pro-life movement funded and resourced and moving and work on policies that are going to help women really choose life and be able to do that in a sustainable way.
So, and this kind of goes along with some of the news of the day, and we can touch on this as well. So Planned Parenthood said on Monday that it's going to withdraw from the federal family planning program that provides birth control and other health services to poor women rather than comply with new Trump administration rule that forbids referring women to doctors who can perform abortions. This is a federal program that's known as Title X. Planned Parenthood receives about $60 million of the $286 million given annually through this federal program. This is some pretty good news on your end, right?
This is exciting for so many reasons. I mean, I will say this is probably one of the biggest steps for the pro-life movement that have happened recently. I know that many states like Texas permanently defunded Planned Parenthood. And there's a lot of good reason for that because they have been known to traffic human body parts and to harvest human body parts, which is illegal. I mean, this is a program that is dark. They hide women who are in there because their sex traffickers are in there and they're pregnant through sex slave rings. They have been known to harbor and hide criminals and help with criminal activity. And the fact that they are no longer receiving over $300 million from our government, it's great. And that is because the grant program through Title X is meant to help women. It is meant to be for a healthy to help women through these times that are often very difficult and for actual health of women. And Planned Parenthood has shown its card very true to form this last year as basically being an abortion provider. That's their focus. They provide 35% of abortions in our country every single year is Planned Parenthood. And there are other reproductive health services that they tout as being so exceptional. It's 2% of our population are served by those. So we know them to be an abortion provider, and I think that the fact that the Trump administration picked this battle and said our money will not go towards funding abortions, they're going to go and we're going to use it for outlets that are actually helping women and coming alongside them, not providing a quick fix, quote unquote, but instead going to help with programs that have long-term impacts for women. I think it's incredible show of strength for our administration.
So I think that there's a couple of things that I want to highlight. One is highlight what Chelsey just said, like Planned Parenthood, even though they're, and we'll give some of the numbers here shortly, Planned Parenthood does provide other services outside of abortion, but those services are a very minuscule number comparative to how many abortions they're performing. Abortions are performing upwards of 30% of the abortions in the country every year. And by not accepting this funding with the strings that were attached because of the Trump administration, what we're seeing now is that these funds, these $60 million can be awarded to other entities and organizations that are doing the necessary work that Planned Parenthood has decided that they don't want to do. So when you see in news articles, it's going to say 1.5 million women were served through these Planned Parenthood clinics. Yes, 1.5 million women were served by these funds that were given, partially by these funds that were given by the government. But what you need to know is those funds are going to be redeployed towards other pregnancy health centers.
They're going to go to
and
help
so it's
women.
It's not that women are going to lose out on this. No, women are going to have the opportunity not only to experience care that's necessary when they're in a great time of need, but they're going to be able to they're going to have a whole host of services that doesn't require them to have a greater likelihood of the depression that comes that we know after an abortion, of some of the other health scares that come after an abortion. So this is great news that I want us to be aware of. But then also let's look at the entire context. Look at some of the numbers behind this. They're in their 2017-2018 annual report. Planned Parenthood performed 332,757 abortions during the reported year. That's the most since 2011-2012. Abortion services increased over the year, but non-abortion services decreased over the year. So, for example, what Chelsey was referring to, they performed 570,000 breast exams and Pap tests during the reported year. This is down from the 617,000 that they reported in 2016. So what we're seeing is this inverse that's happening. So there's more funds and more services that are being provided relative to abortion. That's on the uptick. And a whole host of categories of the other tests and exams that they're performing is on the downtick. And so what we're seeing with this, coupled with the news a few months ago with the decision that they were going to change leadership with Planned Parenthood, we're seeing a doubling down on the services that the government has decided that it's no longer in the business of. And this is great news for individuals that are in the pro-life movement, to say at the very least.
I think it's huge. I think we're really turning the corner on understanding women's needs. And at Human Coalition Action, I'm really excited that we do have a partner that I can which is the clinic downstairs. I can walk downstairs and say, hey, what really on the policy side is going to move the meter for women? And they found that 75% of women they ask, they say, why do you want an abortion? These are abortion-determined women that Human Coalition serves who have already made the decision they want an abortion. They're just trying to find one. They'll say, well, why do you want one? And they say, well, if we can help with this circumstance, would you choose to parent? Would you still want to parent? And they say 75% of the times, yes.
Wow.
And what that tells me is women don't really have a choice. They feel pressure from their partners, their circumstances, finances. Maybe they don't have the support systems they need. Maybe there's domestic violence. All of those things are things that we can, as a culture and a community of believers, can come around women and start helping with, whether that's job training, giving them jobs, childcare. I mean, there's a whole host of ways to serve women that aren't just really going to emotionally scar them and kill their children, and which is something they'll have to carry the rest of their lives. So I'm really excited about this step forward. I know it's hard at a high level to understand really that we are losing 1 million of our children a year. There's a woman that works for our clinic, and they said that she's saved like 12 school buses worth of children. And when you think of it in terms of school buses, I think it's almost easier to visualize because we know how many school buses, but 14,000 school buses a year filled with children die. 14,000. I mean, it's just crazy to me when you think about, as a country, what we're doing. And if redirecting our funds is a way to start directing them towards life-saving entities, I think that just is really incredible.
And so the news continues to be bad for Planned Parenthood. I'll read what just came across the wire. Former Planned Parenthood workers have been reporting what happens behind closed doors at Planned Parenthood for years. Major media outlets continue to ignore them. Now a jury has unanimously awarded a Planned Parenthood whistleblower $3 million in damages 2 years after she sued the organization for wrongful termination. She was a former health center administrator of Planned Parenthood in Arizona, was reported was fired after reporting to superiors a variety of fraudulent and negligent activity that was endangering patients. And so the news continues to be bad for Planned Parenthood, but it is also a reminder for us to continue to be vigilant because of the urgency of the issue and the significance of this issue as well. But we have got to take a break right now. But when we come back from the break, we're going to welcome Dr. Jack Goodyear from Dallas Baptist University. He is a political science professor as well as the dean of the Cook School of Leadership. There is a new study out that indicates that Republicans are increasingly fearful and distrustful of the college campus. And so I'll be really interested to hear from him specifically what are the rationales, what's causing this upswell of distrust towards higher education institutions, one, and two, is there a differentiation between what's happening at Christian colleges as well when compared to what's happening at secular universities? But we'll be back right after this.
From Affirm Films, Provident Films, and the Kindred Brothers comes Overcomer. John Harrison is a frustrated coach questioning his value until he crosses paths with a student struggling on her own journey.
What have you allowed to define you? When you find your identity in the one who created you, it'll change your whole perspective.
Overcomer, starring Alex Kendrick and Priscilla Shirer. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. In theaters this Friday. More information is available at overcomermovie.com.
It's been said that a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. That was definitely true in the 19th century when preacher Charles Spurgeon said it. But here in the 21st century, truth can be just as fast. Think about it. When Point of View presents the truth, it reaches people across America and around the world instantly. You make that instant truth a reality when you join the Point of View Radio Truth Team. Get all the details now at pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Nick Pitts.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. I'm joined at the Millennial Roundtable by Chelsey Youman of Huco Action. We were just talking about our middle school days just right now. And so it only makes sense that we're talking about middle school, or then we're transitioning to higher education, right?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Were you scared going into college?
No, I was I was ready to take on the world.
Yeah.
I'm very social. So the thought of having like 50,000 friends at Texas A&M University, I was I was ready.
So even though it was the second best university in Texas, you were okay with that?
By whose standards?
Okay, so
you're not even from here. Get out. You're not even from here.
Speaking of the first best university in the state of Texas, we have got Jack Goodyear, who is the dean. He's a dean over at Dallas Baptist University. He's the dean of the Gary Cook School of Leadership. Jack, how are you this afternoon?
I'm good, and it's an honor to be included in the Millennial Roundtable. It's a first for me.
Yeah. So you are an honorary millennial, just so you know. And
right.
so we do have like an initial polling question that we have right now. Because it's the Millennial Roundtable, there's a brewing debate right now on Twitter about which fast food restaurant has the best chicken sandwich. And so Popeyes has just introduced this monstrosity of goodness onto the scene. But you've also got the tried and true Chick-fil-A. You've got the original Wendy's. I mean, we've got to lead you off with a softball, or maybe this is the fastball that you're going to have to answer right now. So thoughts?
Right. Well, I mean, I guess we always default to Chick-fil-A, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Physical answer and everything else. So,
are you a spicy guy, normal guy? What are we talking here?
No, I do spicy.
Okay,
Number 2.
good. Okay, I feel really good about that. Okay, so moving on to what Jack is more just what we're really wanting to talk with Jack about is there is this recent Pew Social Trend Survey that came out that was super illuminating for me, especially coming from a higher education scene, and just so our listeners know that Jack and I are colleagues. He is much smarter than I am, and just a phenomenal professor as well as a dean at the Gary Cook School of Leadership at Dallas Baptist University. But there was an interesting Pew study that came out that showed that there was an increase in the share of Americans saying colleges have a negative effect on the U.S., and really, what was really fascinating, the data point really indicated towards Republicans as well. And so if we look at this from a contextual perspective, we see that Republicans in 2012 at 35% of Republicans had a negative view of the U.S. colleges and higher education institutions. That number today stands at 59%. Jack, when you saw that, what were some of your reactions that you had?
Well, I looked at it a little bit from a historical standpoint to the fact that I was more surprised that in 2012 it was so low, because if you look back at the history in the United States, there has been, particularly in the 20th century, kind of the strain of what's called anti-intellectualism in conservative Christian circles. And to say anti-intellectual doesn't mean that they're opposed to knowledge or opposed to intellect. It's this kind of fear or suspicion of the intellectuals, so to speak, at the university level. And so there, if you go back to the historical look at that developing in the early 1900s with the Scopes trial, and then going on throughout, there tends to have been this strain of anti-intellectualism that has kind of come and gone throughout history, and just kind of the religious right or fundamentalist or conservative Christian reaction at times to what's happening in academia, or what the fears of what could happen with further research on issues, or the chipping away of quote-unquote truth on things. That's been a common coming and going of conservative thought throughout the last 100 years.
Yeah, that's a great point. I can't help but think about the scandal of the evangelical mind, right? And so you've got Mark Knoll that says the scandal of the evangelical mind is that there's not one. And there is that points to that whole idea of the anti-intellectual bent within evangelicalism. But what's kind of frustrating, especially from the Christian background for our listeners, is that we know that not to be the case, that Jesus has called us to love him with all of our minds, according to the Great Commandment in Matthew 22, that the writer of Proverbs would say that we're to seek after wisdom and understanding like it's that of gold and silver. So I want to dig down a little bit deeper into these numbers, and because there is this significant uptick. And so it's one thing for me to say, for some of our listeners who don't have access to this chart, it's one thing for me to say in 2012, there was it was registering at 35%, and the negative rate jumped to 59% in 2019. But if we look at it even closer, there was almost a 21, there was not almost, there was a 21-point hike in the negativity rating from 2015 to 2017. And so obviously there is that. There was an election, Chelsey, that happened in 2016. Have you heard about this?
I know something happened.
There was an election that happened during this time.
I'm not going to attribute all things to the president. So I'm going to take a different bit. Yeah. And my theory, and of course I'd love for you to talk to me about what the real theory should be, Dr. Goodyear, but my theory is what we've seen in current events from the university campus does not bode well for trusting the university campus. So we know that there are speech forums now. We're having free speech issues constantly arise. We've got Berkeley protests so incredible at Berkeley. Antifa's been there that certain conservative speakers can't even go to the university campus. And so I would say that at least in some legal circles I've been in, even as of a conference I was at last week, the talk about the free speech crisis on university campuses have had that's what we've been seeing in the news from universities. And so if we're not indoctrinated into the daily universe at universities, we're just watching from what we see and can glean from the news about what's happening there, it does look like a little bit of a dire circumstance from the outside looking in.
Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I certainly think you can't blame everything on the election in 2016. Certainly people switch views based on kind of the in or out thing at the time, but I would definitely attribute some of it to some of the rhetoric that comes out as far as anti-elitism, and so that how that would come over into intellectualism as well, and just the fact that a lot of the polls show that the higher education area were pretty not in favor of the past election.
Yeah.
That being said, there's a great book, Coddling the American Mind, that talks a whole lot about the lack of diversity on college campuses, or lack of toleration when it comes to the free speech issues that you brought up. And so I think that's very important that we've kind of seen some really good research that's come out as well, showing this whole idea that the college campus should be a place of burgeoning debate and discussion and diversity of views can sometimes not really be the reality. And of course, what gets picked up is the violence that takes place as a result of some of that, which I don't think is indicative of the entire debate overall, but that gets picked up by the media and shown as well, which just kind of reasserts this idea that the college campus is this place that is not appreciative or open to free speech. And so you have a kind of a perfect storm of somebody that in the White House that is kind of more anti-elitism in that way, and then you also have some of the stuff happening on college campuses that kind of reinforces that, and you have the media picking up on some of the most violent extremes of that kind of help reinforce that all together. So you do kind of have this perfect storm of things that took place between 2017 and now.
And I like to think, like my most recent, like my favorite concept right now, Chelsey, is this idea of nut picking. Partially just because it always draws a scowl on individuals' faces whenever I say it in a public setting. But nut picking is this concept that we take an outlier of a particular group and we make this outlier representative, and we make them representative and project their understanding and their belief onto the entirety of the group. So, for example, if I were to nut pick Christians, I would say every Christian is a member of Westboro Baptist Church. Or if I were to nut pick conservatives, I would say every conservative is a neo-Nazi. Or if I were to nut pick liberals, I would say, or no, maybe not liberals. If I was to nut pick college campuses, I would say every college campus is like Middlebury. Obviously, Middlebury is the place where Charles Murray and Professor Strange ended up getting essentially assaulted because of some of the backlash that happened there. But Dr. Goodyear, you can probably attest that that's like it's not representative of every college campus. So Dallas Baptist University, for example, please speak to Dallas Baptist University is not Middlebury College, right?
Right. Hopefully not. And so, what's interesting is a lot of times people don't think of the private Christian campuses being as diverse as like your Berkeley or something else. But again, there's and I should have pulled up the article here to show, but there's a really well done article that shows the diversity in college campuses is actually better at these private institutions where you have a diverse faculty of thinking and a diverse student body, and that it hasn't gone to one extreme or the other. And so certainly I think that I would definitely say that we foster good conversations and discourse and try to do so in a friendly, kind way. And I think Christians sometimes are successful at that, sometimes aren't. But I would definitely say here at DVU we strive to do that and want our students to be servant leaders. And part of that comes with humility, and part of that humility comes with then being open to discourse and talking about
that's phenomenal.
Ideas.
So we have got to go to a break, but when we come back from the break, we're going to continue talking more with Dr. Jack Goodyear of Dallas Baptist University right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Under a new law, South Dakota's public schools will now display the national motto on school property. But not everyone is very happy displaying "In God We Trust" on public property. One anti-religion activist called the idea exclusionary and aimed at brainwashing American school children. Well, the only brainwashing seems to come from anti-religion activists with a bent to exclude based on inaccurate information. Indeed, few words are more in keeping with our history and law than the national motto. Francis Scott Key included the line, "And this be our motto, in God is our trust," in the fourth verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. It went on our coins in 1864 and became the official motto of the United States in 1956, a year before it appeared on all currency. It's even displayed above the Speaker's rostrum in Congress. Every one of the 11 Circuit Courts of Appeal to consider the motto has deemed it constitutional. The Ninth Circuit has twice upheld the motto, explaining in one case that the motto has nothing whatsoever to do with the establishment of religion. So the next time you hear someone suggest that it violates the Constitution, just use the words of the Sixth Circuit who determined that a court removing the motto from government property would be ludicrous. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Hi, I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. I hope you enjoyed this episode of First Liberty Briefing. You can learn more amazing stories about how everyday Americans are standing up and saving religious freedom. Just visit firstliberty.org. You'll be inspired, educated, and informed. Visit firstliberty.org right now.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. I'm joined at the Millennial Roundtable by Chelsey Youman of HUCO Action, as well as Dr. Jack Goodyear is joining us over the phone, representing Dallas Baptist University. He's a dean of the Gary Cook School of Leadership. You can find out more information on Dallas Baptist University by going to the DBU website, dbu.edu. Again, dbu.edu. You can find out more information. Classes are starting up here shortly. I'm sure campus is burbling with activity, as I would assume. Right, Dr. Goodyear?
That's right. Yeah, getting ready to start next week.
I cannot wait. Cannot wait. But we have been talking about the increase of Americans, specifically the increase of Republicans that believe that American colleges are having a negative effect on the U.S. This came out of a Pew study that you can find at our website at www.pointofview.net. And it points to that now 59% of Americans, specifically 59% of self-identified Republicans, say that colleges have a negative effect on America. Chelsey, now obviously this study didn't specify what type of effect or what are some of the negative effects that it's having on college campuses. But let's speculate for a little bit. Let's think about, can you give some examples of potentially what are some of the negative effects that would lead Republicans to think that colleges are having on the American experiment?
Okay, can you ask me that in a different way?
Okay. So are there, what would you anticipate as a conservative, what would you anticipate are some of the negative effects that colleges are having on the American experiment?
Well, I would say, obviously this is anecdotal, and I don't have any evidence on this,
no.
but I was at Texas A&M University, which is supposed to be, they joke, like the best conservative education you can get in the state. And I was in the political science department, had no conservative professors and 3 socialist professors.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it would be like, I very much value intellectual honesty when it comes to teaching and curriculum and the history and the facts. And so I would say maybe too much bias on part of the teaching and the faculty would probably shape the minds of the students listening who enter now the workforce or the real world with a political tilt, is what I would say. I have no statistics, but if you're asking me just to theoretically say what a negative effect would be, I think it would be that. And again, lack of just diversity in speech forums on campuses, based on my knowledge at First Liberty Institute from advising multiple universities that their policies were in fact illegal, to say that you have this one corner of campus on a public university to actually speak your mind. And that's harmful for really the dissemination of ideas.
Okay. So Dr. Goodyear, you've got a unique perspective, because I know that I'm completely biased, one, toward you, and then 2, toward Dallas Baptist University. But 1, you've got the political science background that kind of lends itself toward better understanding kind of the conservative as well as the progressive movement here in the U.S. And so you can anticipate what some of those fears that a GOP voter might have towards college campuses. But you're also uniquely positioned at Dallas Baptist University. And would you say that those fears that GOP members have is being evidenced at the campus of Dallas Baptist University?
I don't think so. I mean, there's always going to be people that whatever side of the aisle one is on, they're going to react if they feel like they're getting presented a different side. I feel like our faculty here are really good at not telling students what to think, but teaching our students how to think and how to really take the information that is being presented and how to work through it and use those critical thinking skills to be able to think through and again, to have an influence in this world. I think it's incredibly important for our students to be able to articulate those points of view, particularly from a political science standpoint, in arguments that go beyond just because the Bible says so. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that we always try to stretch our students into, helping them think more along the lines of natural law and how to incorporate other arguments within their point of view and within what they believe to be truth, so they can make a broader impact. And I think our students, whether they're Christians or non-Christians, right or left, whatever, I think I would imagine most of the time they appreciate that and are able to interact with that and grow in that way as a student.
I think one of the unique things that Dallas Baptist brings that differentiates itself from the variety of universities or from anticipated fears that individuals might have that are Republican in nature. So if I'm talking to a Republican listener right now that's thinking, I'm fearful of what's coming out of college campuses, I think that it's having a negative effect. And what I would say, just knowing from my unique experience at Dallas Baptist University, is there are a host of good things that are happening, and then one bad thing that I'll highlight. So the good things is I think there's just a diversity of opinions, as Dr. Goodyear has illuminated, that's happening at Dallas Baptist University. You've got individual students from over 50 different countries. Dallas Baptist is around 4,700 to 5,000 students. Upwards of almost 600 of those students come from a different country. And there's just this diversity of viewpoints and experiences that's just a part of the community at Dallas Baptist University that really does epitomize what John Milton said in Paradise Lost: for truth and falsehood to wrestle in a field, for I've never known truth to be put asunder. There's a richness that comes from an open debate where not everyone agrees with one another, but everyone respects one another and everyone's pursuing after truth. So it does eradicate that anti-intellectual bent. The second piece that I would say is a positive about Dallas Baptist University is it really is developing competency for the students that are there. That 90% of the students at Dallas Baptist University are not going to going into vocational ministry, church ministry. They're going into the business room. Dr. Goodyear is training up students to be able to make their way into political science circles and into politics. You've got individuals that are going into laboratories. And so these are individuals that are being trained and competently equipped in order that they might be effective as well as highly competent in their area and skill set. The third piece is the character piece. I think that there's the Christ-centered integration in higher education at Dallas Baptist University. So you're developing individuals that have character. These are individuals that are trained up, that they're not forsaking faithfulness in the pursuit of excellence, that they have those character qualities that you're looking for. Now, the one thing I will say that I disagree with about Dallas Baptist University is they believe that barbecue is beef. And I just don't understand that, Dr. Goodyear. I don't understand this fallen nature of why we have to believe it to be true, that beef barbecue is the real barbecue, because then you got the pork, and God has told us not to worship the pork because he knows that we'll worship that stuff. It's just so good. But nevertheless, we have got to come to a close here. And so, Dr. Goodyear, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Very neat. And so if you want to find out more information on Dallas Baptist University, as well as some of the programs at the Cook School of Leadership, and learn underneath individuals like Dr. Jack Goodyear, you can go to www.dbu.edu. And with that, we're coming to a close of the program. And so, Chelsey, where can listeners find out more information about HUCO Action?
They can go to humancoalition.org. HUCO Action's website is still under the works. We're so new, but go hear about the great work that Human Coalition's doing.
And it is phenomenal work. And just hearing about some of the stuff that Chelsey is putting her hand to right now and some of the great work that's already started makes me super excited for even more of the good stuff that's going to come out of that. And then you can find out more information about the Daily Briefing and some of the stuff that I write at at thebriefing.net, or you can go to the Point of View website to find out more information about all of that. And you can go to that at www.pointofview.net. And be sure to go over, as long as you're surfing the web and opening up a host of tabs, you can go over to Facebook at facebook.com/pointofviewradio. Be sure to like the page, and we will be sure to express our appreciation towards you. But we will be back here tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm Nick Pitts, and we will see you back here tomorrow.
Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? America needs Christians to be informed and as unified as possible, applying God's wisdom to civic life. Point of View can be a key part of a successful mission. I believe in America. I believe God wants His best for us. We can face whatever the world throws at us as long as we stand together. If you have not signed on, please do it now. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Set up your monthly gift by clicking the Truth Team 360 picture and then carefully follow the directions. Pointofview.net. By phone, you can give at 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Or call us 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just